Disney. Coming from the mind of a person who created a legacy that went from small thoughts to slowly becoming a success story. We have all watched movies from this corporation. Not only movies, but TV shows, either live action or animated, owned toys from their properties, played games. Disney simply cannot be avoided. It seems like everywhere we go, Disney is there. But whether we are children, teens, adults, or dead, we have all been sucked into something by the company. Every movie in the Disney canon is someone's favorite. They rarely come out with a flat-out awful movie. Not all of them are perfect, but all of them have their fans. Sometimes it takes years to have a movie to have a dedicated fan base, a cult following if you will. And seeing that I'm talking about movies with a cult following, there is one that is close to my heart, along with the close friends. I dedicate this to him. Atlantis: The Lost Empire was released on June 2001 with an all-star cast, dazzling animation, quirky characters, and a mythos. The movie should have been a surefire hit, but it wasn't the hit that Disney was hoping for. It didn't make the gangbuster profits that the Renaissance era movies did, and it kind of fell off the radar. The movie has garnered a cult following, well enough that there were talks about doing a live-action movie, along with news that there was a remake going under early development. As of this video, those news reports are just speculation. So the legacy of Atlantis: The Lost Empire is still strong, but why did this movie fall short of expectations at the box office? There are a few theories. Everyone knows Disney as a company that makes movies for everyone, making things entirely accessible, and you can't go wrong with where you can start. And a lot of people have always said that one goes through many emotions while watching one movie, even if it's one that you've watched a dozen times. A lot of these movies want to be easily accessible. And then there is Atlantis: The Lost Empire. You see, this movie was released during Disney's experimental era, which, as the title suggests, was where the studio wanted to try some new things. After all, they had a winning streak with the Renaissance era, which included Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and The Lion King. Big movies that felt grand, but still were able to bring in an audience. Could these movies get dark? Oh yes, but they still had a lightheartedness to them that could let you breathe. And then with the experimental era, Disney did explore outside the box, and it could get weird and odd, but the lightheartedness was there. And then with Atlantis, let me show you some clips from the movies during that era.
And I mean that in the best possible way.
We can go on together.
He took his suitcase? Marge, honey, I don't think he's coming back.
Packer!
I have to call you back.
Dr. Doppler, I presume.
Yes,
Hello? Can you hear me?
You see why Disney kind of buried this, but you can see what those clips were, no matter how odd the movies got. Atlantis is the black sheep, even more so than Treasure Planet. This movie was for an older audience, there is no doubt. There is no kid-friendly aspects in this picture. The colors in here are a lot more dark. There is a violent, intense tone that can turn some people off. And also, there were some complaints about that there were no musical numbers in it, which... Okay, two things. One, there wasn't any musical numbers because in a movie like this, do you think that it would fit in a movie like this? And second, did those people forget that the movie that came out before this one was The Emperor's New Groove, which was a screwball comedy with no musical numbers in the final product? But there were no musical numbers in movies like Rescuers Down Under beforehand and a ton of movies afterwards. So no, the argument of the lack of music doesn't hold up in the slightest. As for people turning away from the movie because it's a different kind of movie with a darker edge, that is understandable, especially during the time it came out, which was in between movies like Emperor's New Groove and Lilo and Stitch, which were very accessible to modern audiences. So people in 2001 weren't ready for this type of movie, but thank goodness for the future. But to those who didn't know about this movie back then, there might be a reason as to why people didn't see it in theaters. Disney puts in a lot of faith in their movies, whether it's in their trailers, their casting, their writers, their animators, and they put into it all when they get released. And most of the time, the efforts pay off. Keyword being most of the time. When this movie was released on June 15th of 2001, it faced some stiff competition during that time. But even with competition, Disney movies usually hold their own. But this was different. Here were the movies that came out in the past month and a half. And not to mention that it came out the exact same day as Tomb Raider. And then look what came after.
Head for the tree!
Let's go for a little ride.
And then when the first Harry Potter movie came along and made absolute gangbusters at the box office, Atlantis just disappeared from about 75-80% of people's memories. And even with people who liked it back then, it was kind of a quiet group of people and it was legitimately far and few. Whenever one brought it up after it was released, people either shrugged their shoulders in confusion or laughed at you liking a movie that wasn't Harry Potter. And here's the thing, the movie actually did alright at the box office. When all that was said and done, it grossed around $180 million against the $90 to $120 million budget. Now this seems modest for any other movie, but it was disappointing for Disney, who have movies that gross double their budget. Now, Disney has had their share of disappointments in the past, but that was because of word of mouth that reflected on them. However, people were talking a lot about a sci-fi adventure that was heavily advertised because of its intriguing trailer. And when that trailer was released on March of 2002, Atlantis was forgotten, to the point to where Disney views it as an old shame. And Thomas Schumacher, then president of Walt Disney Feature Animation, said, "It seemed like a good idea at the time to not do a sweet fairy tale, but we missed." Again, it was just released at a time where people were not ready for a mature Disney movie. This movie is to Disney as One Hot Minute is to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Both have established personalities that go in weird directions, firing on all cylinders, even if they don't work all the time. And when their odd horse comes in with a difference in tone and edge, it turned people away, even to this day. So the movie was seen as a box office disappointment, not for the quality, but for the heavy competition it faced when it was released. Atlantis: The Lost Empire has its flaws, but it was Disney trying to branch out. It was not commercially successful or critically, but it was still a step forward in storytelling. There may have been other movies in the Disney animated canon that took risks, but this was one of the most notable ones. And with Western animation taking risks in terms of subject matter, I'd say that this movie should get its day in the sun. Watch it for its creativity, watch it for its characters, watch it for its humor, watch it for its maturity, and, most importantly of all, watch it to hear Jim Varney's voice in his last movie. At the very least, do it for Jim.